When you start a new piece that is going to be a bigger, more detailed painting, the resolution becomes a lot more important factor than in a smaller, quicker sketch. Because when you're planning a big piece that has a lot of detail and you need that extra bit of resolution, you really have to manage your whole project a lot better, and you have to have a clear vision of when you are going to step up to the bigger resolution. And why I work like this is because every brush has its own maximum size limit. The brush that I'm using for this piece, like all of my other pieces as well, is my own custom brush, but it has its own maximum size. And the maximum size has its benefits, but for this sort of sketching, it would take a lot of time. For example, if I were to use that brush and cover the entire background with these blue and green hues. So that would be a lot of like scratching around, and I'm not even sure that if I want to have that area covered with that color. I'm just searching for ideas here. And for that reason, the scale of this painting in the beginning is only 1280 and the height is 720 pixels. The reason why I'm keeping this resolution so low in the beginning is because I want to create ideas really quickly, and because my brush allows me now to cover a lot more space, it just makes the whole sketching process a lot quicker. And because I'm using the same brush for sketching as I'm going to be using for all of the details, because it's only one brush that I'm using, that brush is going to keep everything looking like consistent, and the way that the colors blend, it's going to be cohesive throughout the whole piece. I don't have to worry about that, and I don't have to spend tons of time in the brush menu thinking that am I going to use this brush for sketching and this one for details? Like, none of that stuff even enters my mind. I can just focus on painting itself and what the painting needs. So I'm gonna just stick with this one brush technique because it's honestly a lot faster for me. And I think there are multiple benefits when you work like this, especially when you go for this more painterly style that I'm using for this piece as well. But the trap with using this sort of lower resolution for sketching phase is that if you accidentally forget to bump it up to the full resolution, once you have done your design process and you have your whole painting idea down, I recommend that you set up a timer for something like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. This really depends upon how quickly you sketch ideas, just as a reminder that you don't have to finish the sketching at that time limit, but just as a reminder that like when the timer goes off, you remember to check that, okay, do I have my idea down on this painting yet? Or do I keep sketching, but be mindful that you don't continue to details before you up the resolution to its full size. For this piece, I went into the canvas settings at one point because I noticed that the aspect ratio that I had set up earlier didn't work for this idea at all, so I wanted to have a bit more height to the whole canvas. So I upped that first, but that wasn't still the point where I upped the resolution to its full size. Only after I had sketched in the character and the whole environment and the main aspects of the painting, then I knew that like these are my colors that I want to use. I have blocked in all of my main elements in this piece, and now if I continue painting in this low resolution, it will be wasted work because I am going to need those crispy, sharp edges for the high resolution version of this piece. So if I continue working on details in the low resolution version, that will just like double the amount of work because I need to retrace all of those brush strokes in the higher resolution version, and that just makes no sense, honestly. So as soon as you notice that, okay, I have my idea already, I feel excited enough to make this into a full painting, then up the resolution. A lot of the time people ask me what is the exact resolution that I'm using for my pieces, and that honestly isn't that important to me because for me, the way that I decide that resolution is what is the maximum that I can work with. For this piece, I use this resolution, and I'm saying this resolution because I don't actually remember it. The editor Mikko is going to have to just slap some text over the screen after checking that number. But how I ended up in this number, I think is the more important thing, because this is information that you can actually use. There's no point in just copying that resolution and making a painting in that resolution. That that doesn't help you at all. The truth is more complex, and I'm just going to have to push through this complexity because I think it's going to help you more in the long run than just copying this sort of number for your own use. After I had the main elements down on the canvas and I knew what the painting is going to be, then I know that what amount of layers is going to help me work the fastest, how many layers I need for example, the sky is its own layer and the clouds are their own layer. Just because painting them all in the same layer would take a bit more time considering the amount of sharpness that I want to have in the edges of the foreground elements. That's possible to work on all of those things in one layer, but I just wanted to have them to be more sharper for this piece. So for that reason, I am using 3 layers for the main elements of this piece. And all the other extra layers, they are not actually necessary. They are just kind of like safety nets when I want to try some crazy idea that I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. Then I add that extra layer and then I try it out and paint on the image, and if it works and if I'm ready to commit to that idea, then I drop it on the layer below, on the main layer, which is this bear turtle character. And that's how I ended up with this resolution, because when I go into the canvas settings and I fiddle around with the numbers, it also shows me how many layers I can use in that resolution. And so from that information, I just know that how many layers I'm going to need to work efficiently on this canvas and how much resolution I can use, because I always want to go for the maximum resolution, just so that the prints will be good looking. Also, when you're making your canvas in the first place, make sure that your DPI is at least 300 dpi. That will ensure that the quality of the print resolution looks good on paper if you use a print service. Speaking of prints, I think I need to confess this weird situation that I've been dealing with lately, because I think this is really important for me to communicate clearly to all of you who have bought my prints, is that I want to make prints when people want to have my art as part of their home and part of their lives. I happily provide that service of making those prints available for you. But I just want to be very clear, and the only reason that I'm saying this is because few of you who have bought my prints have said that they do it because they want to support me and this channel, and it's very uncomfortable for me to say this, but my prints don't make me any money at all. Last month was probably the highest selling print month for me ever, and I got this PayPal notification that from all the prints that I had sold, and it's several prints, I have received 68 cents. And this is because the print service that I'm using at the time of recording this video, Society 6, takes such a huge cut of all the prints sold that the artist gets next to nothing. And if you think about all the time and effort that it takes to submit prints and make sure that all the settings for each product are good, this is actually a lot of time and work to make that happen. So I pay a lot of money myself to sell prints just because I want to make those products available for people. But now I've been thinking that this just doesn't make any sense anymore, especially since I don't ever want to be in that uncomfortable situation where I have to communicate this to someone that please, by all means, if you want to buy that print that is available on the shop for yourself, do so. And I think it's great that you want to have my art as part of your life. I think that's honestly something that I'm very grateful that somebody wants to have it in their home, and I think even still, whenever I have sold one print, it makes me really happy. But please, if you're doing it just to support me, please don't, because I can take care of myself, and it's my responsibility to keep this channel alive and make it possible for myself to make these paintings. So that's my job, and I don't want anybody to worry about me when it comes to that. Another way that people approach me is sponsorships. And this is something that I hope that everybody who is watching YouTube videos, that you are probably not aware of when you watch these art tubers on YouTube, and when they are doing, for example, product reviews, a lot of those products are provided by the manufacturers of those products, and they're only provided to be showcased on their channel. And if they have links on their channel, they get a cut out of it. So it's in their best interest in this scenario to give a favorable review of the product, so that the people who are watching that review will click the links, and that will provide money to the YouTuber. And I understand that I'm not going to diss anybody for doing this, because YouTube videos cost a lot of money. The whole production process is time intensive, and that has to be supported somehow. So I'm not against that. But recently few tablet companies and drawing graphics tablet companies have approached me about these deals, and I have just had to say no to these occasions. Because I never want to make a video where these companies put words into my mouth, because I'm using this tablet, the iPad Pro, and I think it's just fine. It's not that I'm trying to sell this tablet, this is just a tool that I use. One thing that people always ask me about my own hardware as well is that if I have a screen protector, because this is a very popular thing among digital artists, but I have to say that I just don't like them. I don't like them, and this is one of those things where I was offered to do a sponsorship deal on this channel, and I just had to say no, because I just don't think it would be authentic. But I have to say this one thing about the screen protectors that give this extra grip on the screen, that I don't like the extra friction, because it just makes this sort of quick painting kind of less fun for me. The brush strokes, they aren't as fluid, and you kind of have to use more force to move the brush on the canvas anyway. But I can see that if you are somebody who is, for example, just using the tablet for mostly sketching, and I do mean mostly, not just as a part of a painting, but if you're using it mostly for sketching and drawing and line art, then I can see how having that more paper-like friction on the screen can give you a bit more extra control. But I don't think that the glass is in any way impossible to get used to. But if you have that sort of screen protector on, that's on there, it's kind of glued to your screen. You can't just take it off and get it back on whenever you want. You have to choose to have it or not have it. And for painting, this is just my own personal preference. I just don't like using it, and I don't like saying that I'm using one or selling one just to make an ad out of it, because I think this channel to me is more important than just one sponsorship deal, honestly. I hope I'm not making terrible mistake with this, but I just thought that I should be honest about this one thing. One of those extra layers that I have in use that I'm not using for this painting, because honestly most of this painting is happening on the main layer, but one of those additional layers has this sort of graphic line that is just an arc. That is for me to check the symmetry of the bear turtle character, because whenever you have these sort of organic lines that are supposed to be symmetrical, that's very hard for the eye to judge. So I don't even trust my eye for that. I would rather just make a guide and be absolutely sure that the arc is similar on both sides, and not just guess it by eyeballing it. You can also see these elements by flipping the canvas horizontally, but even then, because this arc is such a huge part of this entire illustration and it's so easy to check by just making one of these guidelines for myself, I see no reason why not use it. Honestly, this is my approach to most art, really. If ever there is a way that is faster to make something that expresses the idea that I'm going for quicker, I will always use that. I'm not not interested in having this sort of like arts and crafts hand-drawn competition award for anything that I'm doing, that he made it in the most painstaking way possible. Like, that just doesn't interest me. Like, if somebody wants to go for that type of honor, it's fine, but I have way too many like painting ideas in my head that want to get out all the time, so I just want to get as much of those done during my own lifetime as humanly possible. If somebody wants to do them in like more time-consuming way, that's fine, but it's not the way that I want to do art. I just want to create ideas and get them so that I can do more paintings and have more ideas and just have more fun with those different places and worlds. This whole thing has been like a huge vacation for me, because for once I got a color that I think I'm very comfortable using. I just love painting green foliage and leaves and trees. It's just so much fun. I mean, this whole character, and of course bears. Like, who doesn't love bears? I mean, like, you should. Bears are awesome, and the heads of bears are just like more fun to look at than turtle heads. I'm sorry, I just think this is true. So I thought it was more fun to paint this piece by having a bear head for the turtle than a normal turtle head. So if that's what I want to do, that's what I'm doing. And I thought that this was so enjoyable to paint the whole way through. One thing that I'm avoiding all the time is this like symmetry thing with these. Are those fins? Like, what are those legs of the turtle legs? I think that symmetry part was the most difficult one. So I ended up creating a similar guideline for an extra layer later. And once I have like guideline for one of those legs, then I just use the transform tool and then I flip it horizontally as a copy so that I can be sure that the left and right side match exactly, because that's one of those things that I don't want to be distracting in this piece. Because the composition is so center heavy and symmetrical, I think having this light come from the side, it just gives the whole piece a lot more variety on those both sides. Because if the light was coming directly from above, I think it would just give it a very static feeling. And I guess like my whole idea with this piece was these kids finding this secret swimming spot, and it's that time of the day when kids are more likely to be out playing outside after school before it's too late. So it's afternoon sun that is not kind of like sunset yet, but has that sort of like warm glow. And I thought that this place would be something that grown-ups wouldn't go to because the water is murky looking, so it's not enjoyable for adults to go there and swim. So maybe they have kind of just by happenstance stumbled upon this like magical shrine that maybe isn't always above water, but for some reason is now there, visible. But for the kids, it's just one of those details in the environment that might be interesting for a few minutes, but after they have kind of like explored the whole island, and it's not a big island, then they just go for a swim, and it's just this part of the environment. I think there's something about my own childhood here, or not really, kind of like the childhood that I kind of had and I wanted to have at the same time, because I didn't have this sort of like group of friends when I was a child, and that's because my family was always traveling around the world and we were always living in hotels. So the only way that I could kind of spend my time when I wasn't doing schoolwork was at the hotel pool, because the areas were usually so dangerous for a small child to move on my own, so I just had to be in the hotel area, and one of those places was the pool, so I would spend a lot of time swimming. But I wasn't with a group of friends, I was by myself. So I think there's something combined from that childhood of mine, but also the kind of like things that I wish that I had when I was a kid. And I always wanted to, my biggest dream when I was a kid was to stay in one place for a really long time, to live for years in the same neighborhood and understand how the streets work and so on, because I'm very bad with directions and I can live in one place for years and I can get lost in my backyard even still. So just having that sort of familiarity with your surroundings, that's what I always wanted to have. So I think part of that is also reflected in this piece. I didn't expect this to be so hard to talk about. But I don't think about my childhood as something that I wish I didn't have, because I think it has given me this sort of appreciation for certain type of landscapes that I love painting, and this sort of kind of broken down weathered look that I love painting. And I don't think I would have that if I had lived in Finland as a kid, because everything here is so super clean. It's almost too clean to the point where it's a bit boring. So when I'm visiting other places, I always love these sort of old town looking parts of the city where you can see more kind of worn buildings and weathered look on the walls and the rooftops. That's what I love. I think it's something that it reminds me of being a kid. So there's positive associations there as well. It's not something that I regret having. And when I was living in these hotel rooms, I could kind of decide for myself what kind of school day I was having. So I had a lot of art classes that were taught by me. So I don't regret that. I think that's one of those things that was always an escape for me. And that's why I have so many landscapes, because I just wanted to see more places and not be within four walls of a hotel room. So my art was a way for me to escape to my own worlds, and it still is, and I love that, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, because doing paintings like these, it's just the best thing ever, especially during this time when I've been kind of stuck indoors like everybody else. I know that I have this sort of secret exit route to my own worlds, and that is something that I wouldn't trade for anything, and I think it's priceless. At this point, I decided that the yellow eyes look a bit too scary. I know that they also happen in my moving forest piece, but here, for some reason, because they are so close and the kids are going to be so close to the head, that I just thought that the cyan colored eyes look a bit more friendly. I don't know, it's just intuitive decision on my part. I don't know how you feel about this. About this brush, the best thing about this is that when I press with it very lightly, it also smudges the paint a little bit. So you don't see me opening the color palette that much, because I have enough different colors here that I can kind of blend what I have on screen by doing these sort of light brush strokes and picking that mid-tone from in between. That's why I love using this brush, because it also has a lot of organic look to the brush strokes, because you never just touch the screen with the stylus and press with the exact same pressure from start to finish. So that varies the color, hue and value a little bit every time. So that's why I don't need other brushes for painting this whole piece. I think this is just fine. I probably mentioned this earlier, but my brush set is going to be on Gumroad when all the brushes are done. I'm almost done with them, but I just want to have enough paintings done with each brush that I know that they can be used for full paintings. But I wanted to ask you guys, because this is really important for me on this channel, because I love replying to comments here on this channel and answering all your questions about painting and creativity. But a lot of the comments are just questions about what brush I'm using. I think I have mentioned the brush that I'm using in almost every single video, but even in those I will get tons of questions asking the same question, and it takes time to answer the comments, and there is a decision on what comments I'm answering. So do you think that I should answer every single question about the brushes, even though I'm saying that exact same thing in the video? Because I don't want to appear like I'm rude and ignoring those people, because it's a perfectly innocent question and it's a simple answer. But I'm just afraid that this is so common at this point that it might take away from my time that I get to reply to other questions about art, painting and creativity, which are also very important and honestly for me a bit more interesting to answer, because the brush, it's kind of irrelevant really in the bigger scheme of things. What you should be focusing on if you think that you're struggling with art is just the composition rules and the visual impact, and just creating a huge volume of paintings, really. I know that that's not an easy answer because it sounds like a lot of work, and it is, but it's just more efficient. When I'm teaching concept art, I don't really talk about process at all. Only I'm usually saying to the students that like you're using too soft brushes or too low opacity brushes. That's about it. But the brushes are such a small part of the whole process that it's not like even worth going into in too much detail, because it also gives the impression that it's somehow important when it's really not. The only time when it comes important is like when it's distracting from the main elements of the painting. So that's when I bring it up, that maybe you shouldn't focus on process that much. Because the characters are so small, I spend a lot of time like focusing on brush economy, and by this I mean that if you look at the brush size on the left corner of the screen, I never go to the smallest sizes ever, because there is this sort of minimum scale of brush strokes for this piece, and if you go into like the smallest hairline brushstrokes that aren't even like brushstrokes anymore, they're more just like drawing lines, then it kind of distracts from the whole cohesiveness of the piece. Because if you have detail that is that small in one small part of the piece, you kind of expect everything to be in that level of detail everywhere. And it's easy to kind of get distracted with this when you're painting people. But in my paintings that are like this, I like to paint the people just as a part of the image, not like the main focal point, because they're part of the nature in this piece. I have this belief that like nature has this healing effect for me, and I think that's one part that I want to kind of emphasize with characters in these sort of paintings. And there's something about not painting eyes too closely for these people, because I think that can be really distracting, because the direction of where people are looking, that's always something that is going to pull a lot of attention. So there's a lot of thought into how I'm painting the faces so that they aren't kind of pulling the attention away. And that's why the bare eyes are like fully open and they're staring at the viewer, because that's where I want people to be really looking at. It's this sort of like contrast between something that is very mundane, like this swimming trip, and then this magical element, which is the island and the location itself. It's this sense of discovery that I want to have as part of my paintings, because I want the people who look at my pieces to go on that adventure themselves. I don't want them to be like left out of the piece because there's already somebody else being the main character in that piece. I want people to look at these places and feel like they can also get lost in them and go swimming into some magical place like this as well. So I don't want them to have this fear of missing out. It's a way for me to try, at least in my own best way, in the way that I can, to make this experience like inclusive. When you watch the piece, you can kind of get into that emotion as well. I don't know if this works for you the same way that it works for me, but when I look at this piece, I have that sort of like hot summer day swimming trip feeling. And that's really the best thing that I could get out of this whole process. By the way, this took a really long time. When I started making this piece, I was in the train going to Tampere, and there I painted it in a coffee shop, actually in 2 coffee shops. That desk footage that you saw in the beginning of this video, that is me lugging around all of this camera equipment and stand for the camera. Ghost Paper asked me on this channel how do I film my videos, and in that reply I said that please don't carry around this stand for the camera, because that would be just insanity, and it's honestly true. I tried it and it weighs a ton. I had it in my backpack and it's very heavy so that it wouldn't be as shaky, because it's this one arm that is hovering above the screen. So to make it not tip over, it has to have a very heavy iron stand on the bottom of that camera holder. So that I had in my backpack, also my camera and my Switch that I didn't have any time to play, and of course the battery bank, which is this massive brick that also weighs like a kilo at least. Because these steps are leading right up to the top of the hill in this illustration, I wanted to be very careful with the contrast in the main part of the shrine, which is the top of the hill, because there's already all these leading lines, but there isn't anything interesting there. The shrine part I wanted to make as low contrast as possible, and that proved to be quite difficult because I still wanted to have that sort of texture and illusion of rock texture and the same look that the rest of the turtle has, but it has to look distant. So to achieve that, I used a lot of lighten layers, and when I use a lighten layer, I put it on top of this main layer of the turtle, and then I set it as a clipping mask. And then I added these like very light blue brushstrokes that are going to take away all of the main contrast points from the darkest areas, so that I can make sure that it's the lightest part of this whole hill, and that gives this sort of like miniature, exaggerated atmospheric perspective to the piece that is kind of heightened reality. But in painting, I think it's okay to go for these sort of extremes, because you really want to convey the emotion rather than give a photorealistic expression of the thing. Otherwise, you could just be doing a photo bash. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with doing a photo bash, but especially for some different purposes. But here I'm just more interested in painting because I love the way that the painting process allows the brushstrokes to be part of the story and the way that you tell the story. I mean, you couldn't really photo bash together trees like these. They're not any specific trees, but they're the exact size and the exact color that I want to have in that area of the illustration, and I'm completely unlimited in the way that I can control that. And for that purpose, I think nothing comes even close to the freedom that just 2D painting has. And it's quite quick once you just learn the basics first. And I'm not saying that that is easy. That's why I wanted to explain the resolution process so much in detail, because that information matters. I know that here, especially on YouTube, there is this great push to simplify everything because people are looking for answers, and it can seem like very pleasant that you just give them a quick answer that use this brush, use this resolution. But as an occasional art teacher, I don't think that's ethical to do, because if I did that, for example, to my students, that I said to a concept art class student that use this brush to make good paintings and do it in this resolution, what I have done in that moment is just give them one more box to be in. And that's not kind of enabling their creativity. That's kind of putting a blanket on it. And I don't think that's a kind thing to do. So in these sort of situations, I think it's kinder to explain that painting is very complex and it is very difficult. But that's what makes it so rewarding, because there are so many moments when you can grow and you can find endless amount of new things to learn, and it's just so satisfying to keep finding new things and new ways to express yourself, because you are just going to discover the type of ideas that you didn't even dream would be possible with your skill level right now once you keep learning. And then in a few years, I will be able to paint the type of pictures that aren't just even part of my imagination at this point. It's just all part of this greater exploration. And I enjoy that process of learning. And I'm not waiting for painting to get enjoyable after I have reached X level of skill level. It's already enjoyable. I already enjoy what I can do with the skills that I have. And I'm not gonna apologize for it. Just thinking that the painting is going to be suffering until you get good enough, you're kind of missing all of that stuff that you're already doing. Because the ideas that come to you at this point, they are part of your life right now, and you have this way to explore those thoughts and what your subconsciousness brings to this canvas. I think that's something that is going to happen only in this moment. Whether it's skillful or not, I don't really care. I think it's just process of creating a painting is so rewarding way to kind of like discover yourself and have a conversation about who you are that I just wouldn't trade it for anything. And I wouldn't want to skip the whole learning process either. I understand that this process of learning art can be extremely frustrating, but that's the part that makes it so rewarding. Think of like any video game, for example, where you have a difficult boss and you go through it over and over again, and when you finally beat it and get to the next level, it's only rewarding because it was difficult. If you go into the extreme easy mode, you can play through the game and maybe see all the cutscenes, but it's just not going to be the same experience. So with painting, there is pretty much only hard mode, but you can make that subjective because you can pick ideas to paint that you know that you can handle. Like for example, when it came to this green painting, I just thought like, okay, I want to paint trees because I got this. I can do trees. I know that I can. Like, it's not challenging for me, but I enjoy it so much. So I can pick the easy level every now and then if I feel like it and just enjoy that part. I don't always have to go into the, oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea how long this is going to take and I'm going to need to learn 8 different programs to get this done. That's optional and you can do that, but you don't have to. You can just do the piece that you know that you can do. You probably are going to have new ideas even for that piece. I haven't done a turtle bear island before, but now I have, and I'm glad that I did it because I just love this whole process. It took a lot longer than I thought, but that's only because I painted in so many damn trees and leaves that those are just going to take time, and there is no shortcut for this to happen, and I wouldn't want it any other way, because who wouldn't want to spend more time in a place like this? I mean, I love every minute painting this piece. I think it's that frustration that sometimes make people act in unkind ways, and I've recently received a lot of like very homophobic comments in the comment section, and I just never answer these at all because I don't think they are ready to kind of look into the deeper meaning why they act this way, and I want to kind of protect my channel and my audience from that type of conversation. It's never okay. But I just want you all to be aware that like once you put art online, you are eventually going to have these sort of like haters. But what I want all of you to know, and this is from experience of posting art online for I think 18 years now, that's a long time. That's almost 2 decades. Back in the days of DeviantArt, when somebody was sending me hate mail for weeks and weeks, you would always have to go to their profile to block them there. And I've been doing this sort of community management now for so long that I can say with 100% certainty, and I want all of you to remember this, that these type of people who just attack you and maybe comment on your looks or the way that you talk, you can be absolutely sure that those are the type of people who won't be producing any type of work. And you always want to be the person who is committed to creating art and committed to creating things. So don't feel bad, and you are also responsible for your own emotions, so don't reply to these sort of comments. Don't get dragged into the hate, because then you are also losing your connection with your own art. And be confident in the art that you make, and also understand that you are going to grow. Of course, everybody is not going to love your work, that's for sure, but you are responsible for the type of community that you are building, and you are the one who is directing the communication and the way that the discussions are happening. So it's your party, and if somebody enters your party and gets way too drunk and starts breaking things, you would like to remove that person for everybody else to enjoy the party that you have created. And that's community building, and don't ever feel bad about blocking people who are kind of just using your exposure to get attention, because they are probably hurting and for understandable reasons, but they are not in a right state of mind yet to grow. So you can't, I believe that you can't have a reasonable conversation with those people yet about why they are this way. You can just hope that maybe they will grow later, but don't take it upon yourself to kind of go in there and fix a hater. I mean, that's not your job. Protect yourself and your own sanity. There is this helpful review section in YouTube comments that is kind of like easy because it picks up all of those comments and you can go in there and review them yourself, and it's pretty efficient. It usually catches most of the ugliness of the internet, but recently I've noticed that maybe it's not so good for me to like constantly go in there and check that if there are some like decent comments that are accidentally sorted in there, because there are already enough comments that aren't in that section that I can reply and I can have conversations with those people. So I've been thinking that maybe I should do the kind thing for myself and like visit that section less often, maybe only once a week, to keep myself sane, because I don't want those people to kind of make me produce less work for YouTube, because I care about you guys and I love having this channel. So that's just one of those things that I will probably have to do to keep myself motivated doing these videos and being there for people who are open and willing to have those discussions about art and creativity in a reasonable manner. By the way, YouTube automatically also sorts all the comments that are just self-promotion there also. I just thought that I should share this as well. If you are just promoting your own product or something, that is considered spam by YouTube, and I'm not going to intervene into that. Like if YouTube decides not to have those on, like I don't think it's my job to kind of make the ads of other people appear in the comment section, because I think that is just spam. And the last part for this piece was the side trees and the branches, and like in my other pieces, this part always catches me by surprise how just long it takes to create all this detail on the sides. And this is difficult detail to do because they are at the kind of edges of the piece, so I don't want to have like high contrast, high detail stuff on the edges, yet it has to sell this idea that there are branches and they aren't just like abstract blobs at the sides. So you kind of have to balance these two very tricky things at the very end when you kind of like already thought that you are done with the piece. So that's not my favorite part, but at the same time, I have all of this mood already in the picture, and it's the kind of mood that I enjoy doing. So painting these parts at the edges of the piece, they are just allowing me to spend more time in the space that I have created. So that makes it more okay and more enjoyable. And that's the green painting. Thank you for watching this video and spending this time with me. I hope you go out there and paint a lot of fun art, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!